Welcome to my channel of Gill Master Stories. Don't forget to subscribe button and press on the bell icon for more inspiration and mind-blowing stories. Laura Thompson gripped her 6-year-old daughter Chloe's hand tightly as they stepped into the cold, intimidating courtroom. The high ceilings and stern, gray walls made the space feel more like a prison than a hall of justice. All eyes turned toward them as they moved slowly to the defendant's table. Chloe's tiny hand held on to Laura's for reassurance, but Laura's grip betrayed her nerves. The judge entered. His presence filled the room like a heavy fog. Judge Richard Bennett was infamous for his strict rulings and unwavering adherence to the law. People whispered that he hadn't shown a hint of leniency in over a decade. Laura's chest tightened as he took his seat, his cold gaze sweeping over the courtroom. Case number 247. The bailiff called out Laura Thompson. Laura stood shakily, urging Chloe to stay close. They approached the bench, Laura's heart pounding with every step. You are here regarding an illegal parking violation, Judge Bennett said, his tone sharp and to the point. You parked in a handicapped space without authorization. Do you deny this? Laura opened her mouth to explain, but before she could speak, a tiny voice interrupted. Mama, I'm hungry. The words cut through the tension like a lightning bolt. The courtroom froze, heads turned, and a ripple of gasps and muffled chuckles spread through the gallery. Even Judge Bennett's pen paused mid-air, his steely gaze now fixed on the small girl standing beside her mother, Chloe. Laura hissed, her face burning with embarrassment. She crouched slightly to whisper, "Not now, sweetheart, please." Chloe looked up at her mother, her big brown eyes filled with innocent confusion. "But my tummy's making noises, Mommy," she whispered loudly, pointing to her stomach. Judge Bennett leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. His icy demeanor had cracked just slightly, revealing a flicker of curiosity beneath the surface. "Did you just say you're hungry?" he asked, his deep voice breaking the silence. Chloe nodded confidently, her curls bouncing as she answered, "Yes, Your Honor. Can we get pancakes after this?" The courtroom erupted into laughter. Some tried to stifle their giggles behind their hands, while others let out audible chuckles. The bailiff coughed to cover his amusement, and even the stenographer's fingers paused momentarily over the keys. Laura's face was beet red. She wanted to sink through the floor, wishing she could disappear. "I'm so sorry, Your Honor," she stammered. It's been a long morning." Judge Bennett raised his hand, silencing the room instantly. He studied Chloe for a moment before his gaze shifted back to Laura. "Miss Thompson," he said, his tone softening slightly, "did you not have time for breakfast this morning?" Laura swallowed hard, her voice barely audible. "No, Your Honor, we had to leave early to get here on time." The judge's piercing eyes lingered on her, then dropped briefly to Chloe, who stood quietly, her small hands clasped in front of her. The innocence in the child's eyes seemed to tug at something buried deep within him. "What does your mother do for work?" Judge Bennett asked, directing his question to Chloe. "She makes cookies and cakes at a bakery," Chloe said proudly, "but she works late sometimes at a restaurant." To the courtroom grew quiet again. Chloe's honest answer hung in the air, exposing a reality Laura had tried so hard to hide. Judge Bennett sat back in his chair, his eyes narrowing slightly as he processed the little girl's words. The room, which had been filled with quiet whispers moments ago, now fell into an uneasy silence. His gavel sat untouched, as though even he wasn't ready to deliver judgment just yet. "Miss Thompson," he began, this time addressing Laura direct. "Corley, do you have any explanation for parking in a handicapped space? The law is very clear on this matter." His tone was calm but firm, giving no indication of leniency. Laura's hands trembled as she gripped the edges of the podium. "Your Honor," she said, her voice cracking, "I understand what I did was wrong, and I take full responsibility. I was desperate. My daughter was sick with a fever, and I had to park quickly to get her medication. I didn't even realize it was a handicapped spot until after I returned to the car." Her voice wavered as she added, I couldn't afford another trip to the Judge Bennett's steely gaze remained locked on her, though a flicker of something sympathy perhaps flashed briefly in his eyes. Desperation doesn't excuse breaking the law, he said, his words sharp enough to make Laura flinch. The fine exists for a reason. Those spaces are reserved for people who genuinely need them. I know, Your Honor, Laura said, her head bowing slightly. I'm sorry. Chloe, who had been listening quietly beside her mother, suddenly tugged on Laura's sleeve. Mommy works really hard, she said, her voice clear and unwavering. She's always tired because she makes cakes and cleans plates all the time. The gallery, which had been silent, stirred again. Murmurs rippled through the room as people exchanged glances. Even the bailiff, standing stoically to the side, looked as though he was holding back a sigh. Laura turned toward Chloe, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. Sweetheart, that's enough, she whispered, her tone almost pleading. But Judge Bennett raised a hand, signaling for Laura to stop. His attention was now fully on Chloe. And what do you think about all this, he asked the child, his stern expression softening ever so slightly. Chloe tilted her head thoughtfully. I think my mommy is really tired and we just need a break, she said simply. And pancakes. The courtroom erupted into laughter again, though this time the sound was warmer, more understanding. Even Judge Bennett couldn't completely suppress a faint smile that tugged at the corner of his mouth. When the laughter subsided, he cleared his throat and addressed the room. We will take a brief recess, he announced, his voice regaining its authoritative edge. Court will resume shortly. Laura's heart sank as she returned to her seat with Chloe. A recess? Did that mean she had failed to make her case? She watched anxiously as Judge Bennett disappeared behind the heavy wooden door at the back of the courtroom. Laura sat stiffly on the courtroom bench, her heart pounding as Chloe swung her legs idly beside her. The child's innocence seemed untouched by the weight of their situation. Laura's mind, however, raced with questions. What would the judge decide? Was this recess a signal of an inevitable punishment? When the heavy wooden doors reopened, the room fell silent. Judge Bennett re-entered, his black robe billowing slightly. His expression was as stoic as ever, though there was a faint air of contemplation about him. He adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. Miss Thompson, he said firmly, please step forward. Laura rose quickly, gripping Chloe's hand as they approached the bench. Her stomach churned. Chloe, in stark contrast, gazed up at the judge with curiosity, seemingly unbothered by the tension that gripped the room. Before I make my ruling, Judge Bennett continued, I want to understand your situation more clearly. You stated earlier that your daughter was ill and that this led to your parking violation. Is this correct? Yes, Your Honor, Laura said, her voice trembling. I was rushing to the pharmacy. She had a high fever, and I didn't know what else to do. It was wrong, but she hesitated, her voice faltering. I didn't think. And what do you do for work, Miss Thompson? The judge asked, his gaze steady but no longer cold. I'm a baker in the mornings, and I work as a server at a diner in the evenings, Laura explained. I try my best to make ends meet. Chloe, ever the outspoken child, added innocently, and she doesn't have time for pancakes. The courtroom chuckled softly, and even Judge Bennett's lips twitched with the faintest hint of amusement. He leaned back in his chair. Miss Thompson, do you have any prior legal infractions? No, Your Honor, my record is clean, Laura said quickly, desperation creeping into her voice. The judge nodded slowly, as if weighing her words carefully. Miss Thompson, the law exists to maintain order, but it also exists to serve justice. This is not merely a matter of punishment. The room seemed to hold its breath. Every eye was on Judge Bennett as he continued, given your clean record and the circumstance as you've described, I am dismissing the $200 fine. Laura's knees nearly buckled, but she gripped the edge of the podium to steady herself. Tears welled in her eyes as the weight of her financial burden evaporated in an instant. Thank you, Your Honor, she whispered, her voice cracking. I don't know what to say. Judge Bennett raised a hand, silencing her gently. Well, this dismissal alleviates your immediate burden. It doesn't address the challenges You face I'd like to provide additional resources to help you and your daughter. He gestured to the bailiff who approached the bench. The judge handed over a piece of paper. Laura accepted it with trembling hands, her eyes scanning the list of childcare programs, job training opportunities, and online education resources, all offered at no cost. This, the judge said, is what justice looks like. It's not just about enforcing the law, it's about helping those who need it most. The courtroom broke into applause. An uncommon sound in such a somber space. Chloe's eyes lit up as she tugged on her mother's sleeve. See, mommy, pancakes make people happy. Even Judge Bennett let out a small chuckle as the tension in the room dissolved into warmth. As the applause faded, Laura clutched the paper, for Judge Bennett had given her hands. Trembling, Chloe, standing beside her, beamed brightly, oblivious to the significance of what had just happened. Laura's eyes darted back toward Judge Bennett, who now sat with an expression softer than she'd expected. Miss Thompson, he said firmly, his tone carrying a calm authority, you're free to go, but I urge you to review the resources provided there, designed to help families like yours create a better future. Laura nodded quickly, her voice catching in her throat. Yes, Your Honor. Thank you so much. She turned toward the door, Chloe skipping along happily, her small hand clasped tightly in Laura's. A weight that had pressed down on her for weeks seemed to finally ease. But just as they reached the door, the judge's voice called out again, Miss Thompson. Laura stopped abruptly, her heart pounding. Turning back, she met his gaze, her grip tightening on Chloe's hand. Yes, Your Honor, she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Judge Bennett leaned slightly forward, his eyes steady. Take care of your daughter. She's lucky to have a mother who fights for her. Tears welled in Laura's eyes as she nodded. I will, she said softly. Thank you. How outside the courthouse the fresh air hit her like a wave, cool and grounding. Laura knelt in front of Chloe, brushing a stray curl from her daughter's face. Do you know how brave you were in there? She asked gently. Chloe giggled. I was just hungry, Mommy. Laura laughed, pulling her into a tight hug. Well, brave girls deserve pancakes. Let's go get some. Okay, with syrup? Chloe asked, her eyes lighting up. With syrup, Laura replied, standing and taking her hand. Back in the courtroom, Judge Bennett remained seated, his gaze fixed on the now empty defendant's table. For years, his reputation as an unyielding judge had defined him. His rulings were strict, his demeanor cold, and his courtroom a place of rigid order. Yet today something had shifted. Chloe's innocent voice and Laura's raw honesty had broken through the walls he'd built around found himself. Justice, he realized, wasn't always about punishment. Sometimes it was about seeing people, truly seeing them. He reached for the case file, flipping through its pages one last time. Technically, Laura had violated the law, and dismissing the fine might raise eyebrows, but as he closed the folder, he felt no regret. Today, justice had been served in a way that mattered. Judge, the voice of his clerk interrupted his thoughts. She stood in the doorway, her expression a mix of curiosity and respect. Are you all right, sir? Yes, he replied after a brief pause, just reflecting. The clerk hesitated. That was different, inspiring. Even Judge Bennett allowed a faint smile to touch his lips. Sometimes the law needs a little humanity, he said. That little girl reminded me of something important. The clerk nodded, leaving him alone once again. For the first time in years, he felt satisfaction, not from enforcing rules, but from truly making a difference. At a nearby diner, Laura and Chloe sat in a cozy booth by the window. A waitress placed a plate of pancakes in front of Chloe, the syrup glistening under the warm lights. Chloe clapped her hands with delight before digging in enthusiastically. These are the best pancakes ever, Mommy. Chloe exclaimed, her mouthful. Laura chuckled softly, her eyes lingering on the folded paper beside her. The list of resources, childcare assistance, job training, and online degree program felt like a lifeline she never thought possible. Mommy, Chloe said between bites, do you think the judge likes pancakes too? Laura laughed, wiping a tear from her cheek maybe he does, sweetheart maybe he does. Looking out the window, Laura felt a hope she hadn't experienced in years. For the first time, the future seemed bright. Laura's life slowly began to shift after that day in court. The list of resources Judge Bennett had provided became a road map for her and Chloe's future. Laura enrolled in an online degree program and started taking job training courses, determined to create a stable life for her daughter. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of control over her circumstances. Chloe, as cheerful as ever, noticed the change too, with Laura spending more time at home instead of juggling endless shifts. The bond between mother and daughter grew stronger. One sunny afternoon, as they sat at their kitchen table working on their respective tasks, Laura reading a textbook, Chloe drawing with crayons. Chloe asked, "Do you think the judge is proud of us, Mommy?" Laura smiled, ruffling her daughter's curls. "I think he is, sweetie, and I think we're just getting started." Meanwhile, Judge Bennett couldn't stop thinking about the young mother and her daughter. The encounter had changed him in ways he hadn't expected. In his years on the bench, he had focused on enforcing the law, but now he understood that justice also required empathy. It was a lesson he vowed never to forget. The story of Laura and Chloe spread, inspiring many in the community. It served as a reminder that even the smallest acts of compassion can ripple outwards, changing lives in unexpected ways. What about you? Do you think Judge Bennett made the right call? If you were in his position, how would you have handled Laura's case? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your perspective.